This is a follow-up to previous videos that we have done where we have tested something or bought something and we're going to use it in the future. So, first thing we're going to talk about is from the mystery box video are these rope ratchets or rope hoists. We said we'll probably find a use for. There really is no practical use for these that we've come across. You can hang a light from the hood of your car while working on this drop light if you don't have a drop light. Used them to hold a hood up once, or hanging it from a ceiling beam when the hood struts didn't work. But other than that, we haven't found a reason that you'd want to use these for multiple things. I mean, if you're like going to hide something in a tree camping, I could see these would work great to hold your food up off the ground from a tree limb. But I'm not a camper, so I find things to use them for. But honestly, since that video, they've only been used like 3 times, and they just kind of sit bundled, bunched together. So there are uses for them, just so far nothing that I've used them for that you couldn't use something else for, like a bungee cord. But I see the biggest purpose for these would be camping, hang stuff from a tree, since they do ratchet. On that same video, there was the rubber plastic feet insoles. Yeah, those suckers hurt. Those little metal discs, I don't have them anymore, but those little metal discs that were in that video at the heel and the balls of your feet, very uncomfortable. Not not something I would recommend unless those are your sore spots. For me, more of the arch is my problem. So they provide no arch support, so they provided me with no real purpose other than to annoy me. So, next, and the last item, if you remember, we did the Knight Rider scanner, or the Knight Rider scanner because it's spelled wrong. Here it is. We mounted this into a nose bumper guard on an old Cadillac. We took out the piping, which is on this end mostly, cut it a little bit so it fits. You can see where we notched it out. And then there's no double back tape on this, so once we got it in place, we used copper wire and wrapped it through Western Union and then cut it off. And on this end, we drilled a hole through the metal base near the bolt, because on the front bumper near the outer bolts there's a hole in the actual steel bumper to feed the cable through, so there's no damage to the actual ribbon cable. But in the Arizona heat in our monsoon season, when we reach temperatures of 120 in the shade, the front of this car probably reaches 200 in the sun, the plastic heat shrink started peeling off. On its own, not a big deal. The problem is where the completely missing right here, this row of lights burned out, and in the process it destroyed the little box that controls them. So the end that this plugs into melted. It overheated. It didn't pop the fuse when these lights shorted out. Would love to turn them on. I don't have another one to plug this into. So if you're going to use them on your vehicle, you can get clear heat shrink to reheat shrink this if you wanted. I have some. I didn't think about it, and by the time I noticed I had a problem, I didn't realize it was peeling all the heat shrink off to make it more water resistant. So with the heat shrink coating, these are pretty water resistant. This was on the car for over a year before it failed. Once the heat shrink failed, I lost 6 lights, and the 6 lights that I lost, I believe in turn created a large short that burned out the actual controller that this plugged into. So, but what I ended up doing is going to a junkyard, buying another nose piece to make the car factory again, and just remove the components. Because this was able to display a solid white light, as you saw in the other video, this was used as a nose driving light when we drive through the desert. There's a lot of rural areas that don't have street lights, if you're not familiar with the Southwest. And all the light you can have is great, because when something runs out in front of you, like a coyote or a javelina, or hell, even a horse or a deer, you don't want to hit it. So this actually provided a beautiful range of light, especially with the point. It gave me a nice arc. So it was a nice feature. At car shows, because it was a car that we took to car shows, the red, blue, green, blue, the four flashing, or the Knight Rider effect going back and forth in multiple colors was a great addition. And because these are white and the piping is white, it kind of blended in. I mean, it does kind of look like teeth. Unless you were really staring closely, it was really hard to tell that the front was modified. So I did like the light. I might replace it. Haven't decided yet. It's not too hard to take off. It's just on this car, it's just 6 bolts, 6 nuts actually. And all I have to do is drill another hole in the new one. Or excuse me, I just have to cut this out, replace this. I wouldn't modify the new one. Replace this, rewrap new wire, call it good. I might, if I do replace it, stick a second layer of heat shrink on it and clear, maybe a third, to hopefully mitigate some of the sun damage. Our monsoon season is when this failed, monsoon season of last year. It's just been sitting, so keep forgetting to do a follow-up on it. So I did like it. I do recommend those Knight Rider lights. Be careful. State laws, they kind of frown on these things, especially if they're on your car and you're on the street. In the desert, on the back roads, highways, state routes, I'd use it as a driving light. If a car would come up in oncoming traffic, I would turn it off, because these are extremely bright and it's just like being blinded by a bright light. So other than they don't really care for the temperature, it dries out, turns yellow and cracks, and then if moisture gets on these chips, you're screwed. So on the other video we show you how these work. So if you go to the video where we do the Knight Rider light, you can see how this actually functioned before it was installed on this nose piece. And if you search for them on eBay, you can find them. And if I remember right, we have a link in the description, or right below the description in the comments, where these were purchased, if they're still available. So, but this is a follow-up on a couple of things that we have done that we said we'd do follow-ups on in the future. And this was the biggest one, the one that had the most requests to find out what happened to it. And that's what happened to it. Burned out right here. All the heat shrink cracked. And if I was to replace it, I'd recoat it with new heat shrink, probably 3 layers. Different states, you may not have the same problem. At least in Arizona, our sun destroys everything. So, alright. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I answered any questions from the previous videos. If you had any, leave any comments below. Thank you.